Again, that word is hok, and it literally means the statutes, judgments, and the commandments of the Most High. It means it's His word from Genesis through Revelation. Ezekiel 16:25 through 27, the word ordinary, 27:06 in the Hebrew, it's hok. Let's go to Proverbs. Very interesting scripture in Proverbs. A sister showed me the other day, Proverbs chapter 31, speaking of the portion or the food that the husbandman, Yahweh, gives to his bride or gives to his wife. In Proverbs chapter 31, I'll read verse 15. And we know the story. It talks about who can find such a worthy and a righteous or a capable wife. It says she's far more than rubies. The heart of her husband shall trust her. This whole chapter is geared or spoken of to the wife that was supposed to be Yahweh's. This is the type of wife that he was supposed to have, and she did not fulfill this. Who can find a capable wife? She is far more than rubies, or worth more than rubies. The heart of her husband shall trust her, and he has no lack of gain. She shall do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She shall seek wool and flax, and will delight in the works of her hands. She shall be as the ships of Tarshish, who bring all fine food from afar. She also rises while it is still night, and provides food for her household. And here it is. And a portion is given to her handmaids or to her girls. This is speaking of the great whore, speaking of the bride of Yahweh who had children, sons and daughters, and their daughters are spoken of these different nations. But here, the word again is hok. It is the statutes or the commandments of Yahweh. Let's go to Matthew chapter 4. Matthew chapter 4. A very familiar scripture to most. Matthew 4, and I will read verse 4. And he answered and said to them, it has been written, the Messiah Yeshua speaking, it has been written that man shall not live by bread alone, not by a physical bread or a physical food, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahweh. This is the spiritual food. This is the true food indeed that Yeshua speaks in John chapter 6, verses 66 through 67. He said, my blood is the real food, my blood the real drink. And for those who will be taking Passover coming up in just a short week from now, we will be having the body and of the blood of our Messiah, not physically, because we're not into cannibalism, but spiritually. We will be reiterating our commitment. We will take our commitment or our covenant again through the Passover ceremony, through the unleavened bread and the wine, through the foot washing ceremony of John chapter 13. But Deuteronomy, one last verse to show the food is the statutes, the commandments, just to show in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3. And he humbled you, talking of Yahweh, and he let you suffer hunger, and he fed you with the manna. And you did not know, nor your fathers know, to make you known that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahweh. In Deuteronomy chapter 4, back a few pages, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 1 through 5. And now, O Israel, listen to the laws and the statutes and judgments. Look up that word. It's speaking of hok, the statutes, the commandments, and the Torah, which I am teaching you to do, so that you may live. That you may live, and shall go in and possess the land which Yahweh your Elohim, the Elohim of your fathers, is giving you. Do not add to the words which I am giving you today, nor take away from it. And this is what the bride has done. She has taken Yahweh's commandments, statutes, and laws and perverted them to her own destruction, to her own understanding, to her own interpretations, such as we see in the Babylonian Talmud, the Mishnah. and all the other demonic books that have come from our brother Judah, so as to not guard the commands of Yahweh which your Elohim is commanding you. Your eyes have seen what Yahweh did to Baal Peor, for Yahweh your Elohim has destroyed from your midst and all the men who followed Baal or Baal Peor. But you are clinging, or going to cling, to Yahweh your Elohim, and you are alive today, every one of you. We need to cling to Yahweh and His commandments if we want to stay alive, not just physically, brethren, but spiritually in His kingdom. We're not out to save our life. We are out to preserve it through His spiritual law. See, I have taught you laws and right rulings, or judgments and statutes, as Yahweh my Elohim commanded me to do thus in the land which you're going to possess. All right, the next characteristic, number 14, is she sits on 7 mountains. Let's go ahead and read Revelation chapter 17, allowing the Scripture to interpret the Scripture. Revelation 17, and I'll read verses 7 through 9. And the messenger said to me, why do you marvel? Let me explain to you the secret of the woman and the beast that she rides. And we'll speak of the beast and who she rides afterwards in another characteristic trait. But it says, which she has 7 heads and 10 horns. And the beast that you saw, which is, or which was and is not, and is about to come out of the pit of the deep, goes to destruction, and those dwelling on the earth, which names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, shall marvel when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is. Here is the mind that has wisdom. You want wisdom? Ask for it in James chapter 1. Let Yahweh speak to you through His word. Here is the mind that has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Men have interpreted this to be the 7 continents of the world, so that America shall fit this characteristic for them. Putting that little square peg into a round hole is what they're doing. They're trying to force the situation and make their presumptuous doctrines fit. And yet Yahweh says the woman sits on 7 mountains. Well, let's go ahead. I want to read something very interesting, because this is something that needs to be spoken, and many people do not understand or not have heard this. But from an expanded internet edition from February 1, 2000, it's entitled The 7 Hills of Jerusalem by Dr. Ernest L. Martin and reformatted by David Seleth, excuse me. Again, this is from his newsletter of February 2000. And he says, quote, it was a common customary in the centuries before the time of Christ for people in the Roman world to refer to the city of Rome itself as the 7 hills, But clearly we see in Revelation chapter 7, verse 17, 7 through 9, that it says it sits upon 7 mountains. 7 mountains, not 7 hills. The references are numerous and consistent. And indeed, when Romulus and Remus wanted to build a city in the area of the Tiber River, just inland from the coast, to afford a greater protection for the city from sea pirates or from the naval warfare of hostile powers, it was divinely selected. It was divinely selected, the 7 hills of Rome. And we know that Yahweh is the creator of heaven and earth, and has created Jerusalem as His holy city, and He has divinely created or selected Jerusalem. But it says it was divinely selected in Roman parents that the city had to be on 7 hills. The number 7 was a universal symbol that signified completion or perfection. And the ancients who founded Rome wanted people to know that this particular city was destined to have a world of influence and fame. Is this America? Is this Rome? Or is this the woman that Yahweh created to be His bride, adorned her for beauty, that sits upon the queen as a queen upon all lands, through her Torah, through her righteous living, or was supposed to be a righteous place with righteous laws, and has not turned out to be that way? And it continuing here, he says there was supposed to be a universal system, symbol, and signify completion and perfection. And the ancients who founded Rome wanted people to know that this particular city was destined to have a world of influence and fame, and that it was no ordinary city, that it was being constructed in the 8th century. The fact that Rome was designated the seven-hilled city, quote unquote, was significant enough to render it as a sacred and a holy city that was designed to have world power and authority. This is one of the reasons the ancient people of the world always respected the city of Rome, whether they were its arch defenders and supporters or its enemies and were alien to its political and religious concepts. Even when the city in the times of the empire finally grew beyond the strict limits of the 7 hills and reached out to embrace other hills in the vicinity and even hills to the other side of the Tiber River, such as Vatican Hill, the people, for nostalgic reasons, still retained the name of the city by its original designation, the 7 Hills, or the city of 7 Hills. Continuing with the article, but strange as it may seem, the city of Jerusalem, as it existed in the time of Yeshua Messiah, was also reckoned to be the 7-hilled city. This fact was well recognized in Jewish circles. In the Perkei de Rabbi Eliezer, an 8th century Midrashic narrative, section 10, the writer mentioned without commentary, showing that the understanding was well known and required no defense, that Jerusalem is situated upon 7 hills. Recorded in the Book of Legends, edited by Belek Ravitsky, page 371, paragraph 111. And so it was, those 7 hills are easy to identify. If one starts with the Mount of Olives, just to the east of the main city of Jerusalem, but still reckoned to be located within the environs of Jerusalem, there are 3 summits to the Mount of Olives. 1. The northern summit, or the hill, is called Scopus, hill number 1. The middle summit, or hill, which was called Nob, or hill number 2. The highest point of the Olivet itself, and the southern summit hill, was called in the Holy Scriptures the Mount of Corruption, or the Mount of Offense, hill number 3. And this is taken from 2 Kings chapter 23, verse 13. On the middle ridge between the Kidron and the Turoprian valleys, there was formerly in the south Mount Zion, or hill number 4. The original Mount Zion was not the later southwest hill that was later called by that name. The Ophel Mount, or hill, or Mount number 5. And again, Mount is used so many times, mountain or hill, and exactly what people are erroneously calling the 7 hills of Rome, or the 7 mounts, or the 7 hills, the continents which America is sitting on, is not the same as the 7 mounts that we are speaking of here. He says, number 6, to the north of that rock, quote unquote, around which Fort Antonia was built, is hill number 6. To the north of number 7, and finally there was the southwest hill itself, or hill number 7, that finally became known in the time of Simeon the Hasmonean as the, quote, new Mount Zion. This makes 7 mounts in all. This does not end the significance of the 7 hills for the urban areas that the ancients looked on as being the centers of divine sovereignty on this earth. We are also familiar with the Babylon of the Euphrates, which became the capital of the world in the time of Nebuchadnezzar in the 6th century BC, as being the 7-hilled city. And it may be surprising for some to learn this, but when Constantine the emperor wanted to build a new Rome in the eastern part of the Roman Empire, because most of the economic life of the Roman Empire of the 4th century AD was centered in the eastern half of the empire, he felt that he needed a capital city much closer to the economic center of the empire. He finally selected a spot on the Bosporus called